Hello, it is me, Aurelius again. Today I wanted to talk about freedom of the press. Freedom of the press means that the press is able to speak freely without persecution, to find out the truth and help inform the people of what's going on in the world, tell them what their leaders are up to, give them the truth, expose corruption, etc. What you see nowadays is not that. What you see is two alternate universes where the left are claiming that the right are Nazis and everything, the usual boring stuff, Russian agents, and the right are trying to be patriots. So you get confused if you are gonna listen to all this banter back and forth. So most likely you're either not gonna care or take one side. And it's really sad that there's so few journalists nowadays that are actually completely independent, because everyone needs to take a side. Otherwise you get trampled over by bias from the left or bias from the right. And what is bias? Bias is something that lives in us all. Whether you have a background in Russia, whether you have a background in America, whether you have a background, just about anywhere, you will always have some personal opinion of things. You will always be personal with things. So when you have bias, you usually tend to go towards and be sympathizing with things you believe is right, etc. You might even have prejudges to judge the event before they happen and completely condemn the other. And that is unfair, but a true reporter is supposed to be able to listen to both sides and report on what both of the sides says. For example, in a murder case or something like that. They're supposed to be able to bring out the truth. No matter how bad it might sound, how controversial, the truth, that's what's important. And the importance of truth has been dwindling. I mean, nowadays when you're looking for a job, you're lying about your merits and stuff like that in order to get the job, to have the upper hand over others. But who would want a liar? That's, beyond me. I'm this guy that hates liars. I don't get the concept. But anyways, that's the world we're living in now. What side am I in, you might wonder? Are you a conservative or communist or whatever, or left or right? I should say I'm slightly more towards the right because I'm anti-globalist. I don't want communists to come. I mean, I admire the communist dream of the socialistic dream, where equality exists and no one is sitting on a gold mountains and someone else is sitting starving to death. But that dream is never gonna come into fruition because it's a socialistic dream, it's a dream, it's unrealistic. The socialism is never gonna work properly. And I've seen the effects in Sweden and what multiculturalism does. It just commits cultural suicide. And like Lawrence Southern said in a video,
hey guys, okay, so we now know that the attack that happened yesterday, killing 5 people and injuring many more, that happened on the anniversary of the Brussels bombing, was done by a jihadist, and ISIS, as usual, has taken responsibility for it. And I was following the whole thing yesterday on Twitter, and then I wake up this morning and there's been another attempted attack on Brussels. A man trying to run over people in the street that has just been foiled. And of course, we've had the usual statements come out from our politicians. Theresa May yesterday was saying she condemns this act of hate and evil and division. And then the hashtags have come out. Hashtag pray for London. Hashtag not all Muslims circulating online. Always, every time this happens. And I'm left here wondering, as we have another attempted terrorist attack today, how is this still happening? How are we still dealing with this problem? And not only that, not only how is this still happening, how have we gotten used to it? We here in the West are facing what I believe to be the biggest threat to our culture and way of life since the Cold War, and we're sitting here not even caring about it. And I know people will say, they always go on about the talking points with, what about the Crusades? Well, that doesn't justify anything that is happening now. Or they'll say, you're more likely to be hit by lightning than to be attacked by a terrorist, Lauren. But what they don't realize is that this terrorism that we're having happen right now is just a horrific symptom of something much, much bigger going on. And it seems like everyone except Westerners knows exactly what's going on right now. Erdogan, just a few days ago, announced quite publicly that there is a holy war coming to Europe. And while that may not take the dramatic movie-like form we imagine, the clash of civilizations with incompatible values is happening. And the riots in Sweden and Netherlands are a prime example of the beginning of that. And I'd say that with the 6 million migrants that German intelligence predict are waiting to come into Europe on the borders of Turkey and North African countries, they are only going to expedite everything and all of the issues we are dealing with at the moment as soon as the ice melts. And normally humans would feel some sense of urgency about a threat like this. I mean, back during the Cold War, our parents or grandparents thought that communists were hiding everywhere, just waiting for orders from Moscow. And of course, some agents had infiltrated the West, and the Cold War was absolutely a legitimate threat. But their presence was massively overestimated because people were afraid of losing their culture, their society, their way of life, to the extent where they didn't even trust their neighbors anymore for fear of them being a communist. So why is it that today, when Islamic preachers openly advocate for the destruction of Western civilization and support the murder of anyone who opposes them, that when people are marching in the streets asking for the beheading of Westerners, that when large numbers of Muslims in Europe are being open and honest about their extremism, why is it that today society we just stick our head in the sand and we loudly scream that everything is completely fine? That in fact, it's the alt-right, they're the real terrorists with their memes. It's ridiculous. And I realize that it can be hard for people to imagine things in longer time spans. I mean, myself and many of the people who watch my videos are only a quarter into their life. So we all look at our society right now as it is in the moment and we say, that's not so bad. What is everyone getting so worked up about? And the thing is, when we sit down and we talk about history, we will glaze over entire millennia in less than a minute. We sum up events that took place over hundreds of years in a mere paragraph or sentence, like the fall of Rome. And the reason for that is because in retrospect, we can look at these situations and realize that all of these events that happened over the span of 100 years were leading up to this crucial point, the fall, the war, the creation of an empire. All of these points throughout it over hundreds of years led up to a crucial crux in the story. And while it may not be our natural inclination, I always try to think like that. I try to think the fact that our policies that we apply now or events that occur now have spiraling consequences of which the impact we may not know for 100 years from now. And I try to make predictions because I'd like to potentially prevent disastrous futures. And it's not hard to make well-educated guesses. And I can tell you right now that I don't think high birth rates in a rapidly growing immigrant community that suffers from rampant radicalization is a recipe for success. And when we ignore facts like that and ignore the potential effects that we could have hundreds of years from now, we aren't necessarily sacrificing our own lives or happiness. And that's why it is so easy for us to just say hashtag pray for London and move on with our lives. That is why it is so easy for us to say hashtag not all Muslims and then condemn those who claim we have a problem. Because we are not sacrificing our own lives. We will still get to go to the party tomorrow. We'll still have our Facebook and Snapchat and cute apartment and friends, and we'll be good. But it is the futures of our children and their children and other people's children that we are sacrificing. And historically, that was something that mattered to people, the future of their nation, the future of their people. But today, that sentiment is totally lost. Young adults growing up today would rather live a life of consumerist hedonism than start a family and preserve their Western culture and heritage. And they're free to do that. But because of this reality, the problems we are facing are so much bigger than just the already terrible problem of people genuinely wanting to destroy and transform Western culture into an Islamic one. Because we not only have to deal with that, we have to deal with a sickness within ourselves and our own culture. A suicidal nihilism and pathological altruism that is going to make it so that when future generations look back on today, they're going to be astonished that we missed the warning signs. And It's not only that we don't try to find a solution to preserve our culture, that being things like classical liberalism, our language, our history, free speech, democracy, but we willfully ignore that we have a problem at all and condemn people who try to point out that we do. We act as though terrorism is just a daily event now, and this isn't really the fault of the general population because this doctrine is being imposed on us from on high. Last year, Muslim Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, claimed that terrorism was simply part and parcel of living in a major city. And after the horrific Nice attack, the French Prime Minister came out and said that France is just going to have to live with terrorism. And of course, rich progressive celebrities and blue checkmark journalists on Twitter will back them up and go on about how there are so many more attacks in the Middle East that we ignore, and that we're selfish for focusing on all our attention on one little stabbing or bombing or shooting in Europe. But they don't live in the growing Islamic enclaves in Europe, do they? They don't live in Luton. They don't live in Rotherham, where their children would be subjected to racial and religious abuse on a daily basis. No. They live in their gated communities, protected by private security guards, shielded against the truth of the outside world. And they have sacrificed their nations to multiculturalism, but they will be warm and safe throughout the entire process. There's an old saying that I think is extremely pertinent to what is going on right now, and that is that bad times create strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create bad times. And our politicians and leaders are those same weak men today, who do not have the gall to speak out against the oncoming storm that is Islam. For fear of what? For fear of being called names, for fear of being called Islamophobe. You have teachers today telling their students that us not just totally opening the borders to all of these people that could potentially be terrorists, they're telling their students that's racist and Islamophobic. University lecturers are decrying the existence of borders in general as merely social constructs and therefore worthless. In fact, they're telling us that the West itself is something that they would like to decay along with the culture and people within it. Yet, the only reason that these progressives can say these ridiculous things is because their freedoms were hard fought for and won by those who came before them. And now, those values that others fought for, that created the good times, that many of us are still enjoying and experiencing now, are being sacrificed by a generation who refuses to fight, let alone even speak up in defense of their values today.
And she was spot on. So spot on with what she said. It was things like I've said all the time, but she has wrecked it out there and, explained it very well. And it's very interesting to hear it from a woman, because I'm so used to hear from women that, oh no, we need more multiculturalism, we don't have enough of that here in Sweden, blah 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 blah. And we are supposed to surrender our cultural heritage to make room for others, these migrants, these Muslims that comes, who clearly says that they are coming from the house of Islam, and everything else outside of the house of Islam, the house of peace, is in the house of war, and they are coming to conquer. And they have made quite some heavy remarks lately. And I mean, there was some minister that came into the British thing, and he said a lot of things as well.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Friends, Assalamu alaikum. Although I'm now Minister for Justice, working alongside the Lord Chancellor, Jack Straw, who sends his good wishes, I was until 3 weeks ago Minister for International Development. It's also been a privilege working with Islamic Relief, Muslim Aid, Muslim Hands and many others. Come on, a round of applause for the Muslim NGOs. My work as International Development Minister has resulted over the next 3 years with the UK assisting Bangladesh to the tune of £370 million, Pakistan inshallah £480 million, Palestine inshallah £243 million, Yemen in excess of £100 million, not to mention Sudan and Somalia. I'm proud of the achievements of the Muslims of this country from '97, In 1997, we got our first Muslim MP. In 2001, we had 2 Muslim MPs. In 2005, we had 4 Muslim MPs. Inshallah, in 2009-10, we'll have 8 Muslim MPs. In 2014, we'll have 16 Muslim MPs. At this rate, the whole Parliament will be Muslim. But you know, we've got 4 Muslim MPs. There should be 20 Muslim MPs in Parliament. And inshallah, very shortly, we'll see that. And I'm confident, as Britain's first Muslim minister, that inshallah, in the next 30 years or so, we'll see a Prime Minister in this country who happens to share my faith. Today, we're showing the true face of Islam. Our future in this country is very bright. Thank you very much.
But of course, I could probably show you a whole bunch of videos with these so-called radicals speaking, but that's not radicals, that's people following the law of Islam. You know, in Sharia law, the law book is the Quran, and what they are doing is simply following it. They're conquering it, and they're using taqiyya as a shield to lie to us and deceive us, because they, in the end, they are intent to convert the entire Europe region into Islam. This is being covered up by the left, and this is what I'm being sickened with the press and etc. I know it's because of the globalists, they're corrupt. You can't trust the media is dishonest. When people are getting raped, here in Sweden for example, they get such low penalties. You know, you can have 5 people murder a person. One guy takes the fall, he's 16, the rest is like 20, 18, etc. So he takes the fall, he's the fall guy. And he gets like 3 years in prison. And the other guys gets like 2 to 3 months juvenile. Sometimes not even prison, they go to do community service, you know, go pick trash and stuff like that. Completely ridiculous. They all should be equally as responsible, because a man ended up dead by their hands. Doesn't matter who dealt the killing blow. They all partook in it, and they should all be judged equally. But here in Sweden, things aren't equal, as they say. This foreign utopia, it doesn't exist. It's oppressing its citizens. People like me, if I kill a person, I get for life. Even more, perhaps. But people like that, they know they can kill a person and get away with a 3-year time. And they don't even get deported. And then you have idiots in the feminist party that doesn't want to deport criminal aliens because you don't deport Swedish hardcore criminals. It's ridiculous, right? Because why would you deport someone from Sweden? He belongs in Sweden. But these people that come outside, you deport them because they come here and take the privilege of becoming a Swedish citizen and mess it up. It's our birthright. It's a country with borders. But no, they want to remove borders. They don't want to have borders. They don't want a country. They want no borders in Europe. It's like they want globalism. Oh, these people are so brainwashed by the media. They think that the right people are terrorists, they think they're Nazis, they think they're murderers, they think Trump is gonna cause the Third World War, and they think they're Putin agents, you know. I'd be pissed off if they would say that our Prime Minister is a Russian agent. I would be pretty damn angry if I found out that our leader are corrupted by a foreign leader, not just by Russia, but by any nation. I would never approve of that. In that way, I can understand why people have such a hatred towards Trump. But that's the sad part. They're misled. They are hearing lies. And through these lies, they make these irrational accusations and hate. Whenever you see someone of them argue, believe me, I tried to speak with them. All they say that you're racist, you should go kill yourself, get out of my country, even though I'm from this country. You know, lots of these things. And there's no rationality behind their comments. There's no logic. Only accusation and attacks. They're just taunting you. And even though you can come up with some argument, they won't argue. They will just say, oh, you're racist. You think like that because you're racist. You're racist. You're racist. That's the only thing they can say. And there's no wonder why there's riots and things like this. They're attacking people just because they're having difference of opinion, calling them a Nazi. If you can't see the fascist communism taking over, it's insane. It's unbelievable what you hear, but it's true. I can sit here and have a small difference of opinion. Then they will stand and scream in my ear that I'm a sick homophobe and everything. But is it really that bad to be a racist or to be a homophobe? Not that I am, but is it really that bad? It's not. It's sort of natural in a way, if you think about it. Is it natural to be a transgender? Is it natural for a man who pretends to be a woman to walk into a girls' locker room where there's 9-year-old girls that's gonna see a grown man come there pretending to be a woman? I mean, if that were the case, I could just go into female bathhouses and just perving out and being like, oh, I identify as a woman. And then they're gonna say, no, you're a man. No, I identify as a woman and you're a man attacking me. You know, I could just act like that. But of course, I'm not gonna do that because I'm a reasonable man. But these people are getting brainwashed and it's creating hysteria amongst them. That's why we have these violent riots. I'm really sad because in the end, when the globalists will win, all of these things we value, or well, for example, if Islam would win, if they would come here and convert everything into Islam, gay rights, they care so much about the homosexual rights of marriage, etc. Trump haven't revoked anything like that, but still they say he's against the LGBT community, the homosexual community, etc. He haven't done anything against that. But you have Islam, where they are throwing people of the highest point or highest mountain, and if they survive, they will stone them to death. That's the law. Otherwise, conservatives, Islam, you know, they have quite a similar viewpoint in homosexuals, really. It's just that as long people don't walk around bragging about it, you know, saying, oh, we're gonna marry, things like that. Homosexual marriage does not belong in the church, period. What they do in their bedroom, no one cares. But that's the thing. In Russia, for example, you might get prison. I don't think even they want to give you that. Maybe a fine if you're gonna profess your homosexuality in openness. But if you keep it to yourself, nothing will happen. Same in Islam and same amongst conservatives. But the thing is, if you profess your love, here in the Western world, nothing will most likely happen, even if there's a Republican nearby. You know, that's America. I mean, here in Sweden, you can do pretty much whatever you want. In Russia, like I said, in Islam, they would throw you off a building and stone you to death. That's not ISIS. That's Islam. That's Saudi Arabia, all of these countries. And women would be heavily oppressed. They wouldn't be able to get a driver's license, drive cars. They would not be able to wear what they would like. They would have to have hijabs. And if a woman would get raped, she would be accused of being an infidel, having sex outside of marriage, and that would be punishable. They could not go outside and shop without their man's permission if they're following full Sharia law. And that has been proposed, believe it or not, in our European parliaments, or German stuff. It's really scary because the Islamic faith, the Sharia law, it goes everything against what Westerners believe. And we are allowing this oppression to come. And the media says it's a good thing. The feminists say it's a good thing. The socialists say it's a good thing. They say you're an Islamophobe if you are criticizing it. And they banned it in Canada. You can't criticize Islam in Canada anymore. And then you wonder, what the hell is going on with free speech? Aren't you able to sit there and criticize things without getting persecuted? No, you can't. But all of a sudden, you can hear in these mosques, etc., calling out for our extermination, telling the British Queen that she should get out of England or convert to Islam, and doomsaying the Jews, telling them to go and die, that Israel shall burn. I mean, they are calling out death wishes towards people, like some death cult. And we are supposed to sit and absorb it, while we have reasonable requests or difference of opinions on certain things. Then we're being demonized. People are being charged with hate crimes for just telling the truth of a rapist that was an Arab or something like that. It's racist. Here in Sweden, they censor that oh no, it was a man who raped this woman, it was a man who raped this boy. They don't say it was an Arabic person. They change the narrative. And like I said, it creates hysteria. If we don't protect our heritage, it will grow far worse. And like I wanted to say with this video, I want to finish it off with the great president of John F. Kennedy. It's a president that got shot, sadly. But there was one thing he said that was very curious, and I wanted to show you this clip and see what you think about it. Because this man was really a special president, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
That should be enough.